If you're using Apollo.io, chances are you might be missing out on a powerful feature you knew nothing about, and that's Apollo's Enrichment API. This API is going to allow you to enrich your prospects' data so you can make sure you have the right emails and the right phone numbers. But what if you wanted to automate this process? Well, that's the whole point of this video. We're going to showcase how we use Apollo.io's Enrichment API to automate our prospecting efforts, and we'll also demonstrate a bit of validation so you can make sure the emails that you are getting from Apollo or the phone numbers are legit. So, without further ado, let's get into it. In an effort to create a visual explainer of this automation to enrich data via Apollo, I want to start off here. And pretty much this is where anyone will start off if you're trying to enrich any sort of data. You're going to probably be working with an Excel sheet, like a CSV with all the different leads or contacts that you kind of have. This could be from leads from a webinar, your CRM data, email lists, so on and so forth, maybe sales prospect list. You start off here and you'll most likely go through the process of cleaning it up. You'll be removing duplicates, standardizing formats, normalizing the data, removing anything that's unnecessary to make that import into something like Airtable make sense. Now, as I mentioned, this is the platform we'll be using to house our data. It's a flexible database that allows us to kind of just put whatever we need to put in there in an easy and retrievable way, as it has access to APIs, which is going to be needed for when we're actually going to be retrieving that data that we put in the Airtable. The next phase of this plan is to pass our data into Apollo's API to enrich it. If you watched our videos in the past, you know that with Apollo, to enrich people and use their API, you can only pass 10 records at a time. And each time you go through that enrichment, there is an export credit. So something to think about as I show you what the solution that I created and how I went about getting through that situation. Next phase of this is actually verifying the email itself. We're using Rion. I'll talk about some other solutions that you can use, but this is where we'll go ahead and verify. We'll go ahead and find any temporary or unsafe email addresses. You'll get like a status or a score, and this will be good for when we talk about even creating dashboards with Airtable to visualize our leads list and see the health of our emails. From there, we'll go ahead and take all that information once it's been enriched and verified, put it into Airtable, and it'll look something kind of like here, but we'll put in Airtable with all the necessary fields and things that we created. And at the end, it's really up to you what you do with that information. You could pass in the HubSpot. You can use something like Smart Lead for scaled prospecting. You can pass in the Salesforce or use Mailgun. There's a lot of different things you can do with it, but at the end of this video, you should have an idea of how to actually enrich your data, verify it, and then do what you need to do. Based on our overview, enriching leads in Apollo boils down to 3 strategies. Either we're enriching manually, which is the process I described earlier, where we're building a list, downloading the CSV, importing in the Airtable, all that jazz. Or we're going to be doing a partial automation, which is all that, but with the enriching and verifying leads piece being automated. Or we're doing a full automation, which is the entire process is automated, as we're going to be tapping into Apollo's People API. We're going to be enriching with Apollo API and verifying the leads. All that's going to be done programmatically through automations and workflows. So those are going to be the primary strategies that you want to go down. For this video, we'll be looking at the full and partial automation, as the video is all about Apollo's Enrichment API. Now, this is where all the automation magic is going to happen. We're using a tool called N8N. N8N is going to be a great tool to build workflows, automations, has a great community, and just at the price for what you can do, you can do a lot of different cool automations with this, with AI and such. That's enough for N8N. Right now we're looking at this canvas from the big scale. It's a lot going on here, so let's break down the workflow in general. I guess first place to start is to zoom into this Airtable node. That's what they call an N8N. Essentially, imagine this being an API wrapper, or a way to connect to your application through this little square box, and that's what we're doing with Airtable. If you remember earlier, Airtable is where we contain all of our contact information that we're trying to enrich We imported that into from a CSV in the Airtable, and now we're going to search and grab all this information, and we're going to enrich it. Next in our flow is this code node, which essentially is just a node specifically made to add code to our flow. We need this because, as I mentioned earlier, in order to enrich contacts in Apollo, you're going to need to pass in 10 records at a time, or else Apollo really won't accept your request to enrich. So that's essentially what we did here. If you look inside here, not to go too deep into the code, but essentially we created this code so that way the flow can actually take our data, break it into pieces, and pass it into Apollo's Enrichment API. Now let's proceed to the next piece of the flow, which is our HTTP request node. This is pretty much a node that is multifaceted. It can connect to anything on the web as long as you have the base URL needed to make that connection. And the API that we're passing is Apollo.io's enrichment URL. This is going to be a bulk people API endpoint, and not to get too technical, that essentially is going to allow us to do a bulk match search. We're going to have to strap in our API key, and we're going to have to pass some stuff into our body in order for our actual information from the previous node to actually get accepted and pass through and get that data enriched. You can see some of that data down here from some stuff we're passing through. You see first name, contact information, things of that nature. And once that kind of gets passed through, we go to the next phase of our enrichment after it's pretty much been enriched as it gets passed through, and we're going to split out and go into different sections, and we'll talk about that. Now that our data has been enriched, we're going to then split all that data into its individual records so they can be loaded up into Airtable, and so we can do other things with it to do further verification and things of that nature. So as you can see here, I have this split out node. This is native to N8N, but it's gonna take the data that we got, split it out, and now we're gonna be able to get those individual pieces and pass it into Airtable, into a separate table where pretty much all that enriched data that we have can sit. But the issue that we're gonna have is we want to verify it. So we're gonna use the information that we split out and pass through another API and then some more code to further arrange the data in the way we want, so we can verify it to make sure all the emails that we have are good to send and do what we need to do with it. As we proceed to the email verification phase of this flow, I did want to take a step back just to recognize the tool that we're using. Rion is actually a really good tool for email verification, but there are some other options. You may want to use things like Zero Bounce, Bounceify, there's Mail Verifier, and there's tons of different ones on the market. We actually found this cool Git repo that went through this whole massive test to figure out which one's good and have all these cool little ratings and reviews for different email verifiers and a bunch of other tools. The real reason why we're using Rion is mostly because it has access to an API, so it's going to work well for us when we're trying to pass through things programmatically. Also, it has some nice little simple features like a nice dashboard, a few other components that makes it helpful. But a lot of these things can be replicated, as you'll see later on in this video, especially that dashboard piece, where we're going to take some of the data that Rion provides and we're going to make our own interface on Airtable. So this verification section, you might be wondering what's going on. Essentially, what we're doing is we developed this code here to arrange our data in such a way that we can pass it through and submit our emails for verification to Rion. And if you look at the documentation, they kind of explain it themselves here, where we would submit the emails, we would create the task, we would pass in all the emails in the way they're asking with the API key that they provide. And we're passing this through their bulk email validation endpoint, which you'll see this is what that URL looks like. And then after that, we're going to be waiting. We set up a wait for the results of that verification. And they're going to return back with the results that we're looking for. So you'll get things like, is this a catch-all? Is this deliverable? Is this disposable? Is it safe to send? All these different things are going to be real important, as we're going to be using this to filter and figure out which is like a good email, bad email, how should we continue proceeding. This is why the verification piece is so important as we go through the enrichment process. So all that is happening in this section here. So I pretty much summarize all the stuff that's basically happening here and why we're doing what we're doing with the weight and all that stuff. And once we're done with all that, we're going to then take the results, split it out, and we're going to update what we entered here and update that same table in Airtable. And that pretty much walks us through the entire flow that we did here. That's how you would do an email verification or email enrichment verification process. Of course, you're going to have to go through Apollo.io's enrichment API documentation to kind of sort through and figure out what you want to pull and all the other stuff. But this explains the whole flow of how you would do it. So before I start in the whole automation piece, I want to go ahead and just kind of show you what the beginning stages of what that data is going to look like. Just for privacy reasons, the information has been like blacked out, but you can see like first name, last name, title, just simple stuff that you would probably start off with if you're going to be working with any sort of like lead list or email list that you may have. The end state of everything, once everything's gone through the automation, has been enriched and verified, is you'll be able to see things like the email, or more verified email, last name, some more information about the company, email risk status. All these things are going to end up in the end state when the automation has fully been ran through. You'll end up having this in this table, which is like a separate table from what was unenriched. So this is what that process is going to look like. I just want to show you that before we kind of go into the whole process and how it's going to end up looking like this at the end. So now with our automation being done and everything sitting in our Airtable, I wanted to show you this real cool lead list health dashboard that we built, which pretty much takes all the information that we house in our Airtable after the verification and the validation has been done. And we're actually able to have like a kind of like a health dashboard to see how our campaigns for prospecting is going, right? So we can actually see the total amount of contacts we have. We can see the contacts with emails that we currently house in our Airtable. We can see the amount of clean emails that actually they're saying, hey, these are good to send, like these are verified and it's been enriched. And we can also see like how many contacts is actually in our CRM. We have this whole process that we built out for doing it. It's pretty much fully automated, so we don't really have that loading piece, so we have to import into Airtable, and that's because we develop a process of going through Airtable and building a whole list. It's pretty complicated, but the whole point is this is kind of like an end state with how you would want to build something similar. You do need Airtable Premium to do something like this, but this is a cool interface that you can kind of build once you kind of have all that data being housed in Airtable. And that's it. We successfully enriched our lead data with the help of Apollo.io, having N8N being the workhorse to automate the whole process, using Rion as a piece to verify our emails to make sure they're legit, and we house all that enriched data in Airtable. So now we can send this to pretty much anywhere we want with the help of APIs. We might want to sell into Smart Lead, Mailgun, or even something like a CRM like HubSpot. And you don't got to stop here. You can make this as complex as you want. For example, that was something that we did. We were able to build on top of this flow, allowing us to make campaigns with the help of Apollo.io's list, making the entire process fully automated, so we don't even have to do the whole import piece. I hope you found this video tutorial helpful. If you have any questions, don't forget to leave comments down below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to let YouTube know, hey, like, yo, we like this content, we want more of it. And without further ado, I bid you adieu, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.